I'm going to analyze the relationship between my significant other and I. In the past, we had many more downs than we had ups, and of course, it had to do with the lack of communication and listening. We weren't aware on how to communicate effectively without arguing, because most of the time when we tried to explain to one another what we thought the issue was, we felt as if we were both being attacked, which eventually led to many outbursts. We always thought that we were both right and that the other was to blame. We sometimes have that same problem now. The two most important things I'm going to point out about a relationship is exactly what the problem was and the result of the problem, and what we have done since then to make it work. In the past, when we initially met 10 years ago, we were very young and didn't have many responsibilities, being that we were only teenagers. We went places whenever we wanted with whomever we wanted and lived pretty much a carefree life. Now, to speed it up a little, we eventually had 2 daughters, and of course our relationship changed. I grew up real quick because of course I was now a mother, but he still wanted to live a carefree life, and he did. He eventually became a selfish person, only caring about himself and not how I felt. He would go out without me, stay out until the late hours, and of course I didn't want to leave our daughters behind, so I would stay home. When it came to communicating, I felt like I was talking to a brick wall. He was a pseudo-listener, and he would do things such as watch TV, be on the phone, or just nod or act like he was agreeing with me, so I would eventually stop talking. He was also an insensitive listener. To him, it didn't matter how mad or sad I would be about the things he was doing, because at the end of the day, he was still going to do it. Me, on the other hand, I was more of an empathic listener. I cared about our family. I cared about everything. I listened to what he thought I did wrong in the relationship, which was not trusting him, and I tried my best to change it. But after being hurt, it was hard to give someone your trust all over again. After a while, I just became a defensive listener because I didn't believe he would ever change, and eventually I gave up and ended our relationship. Obviously, we are now back together, and I'm very happy to say that he's done a complete 180. This time around, when we decided to get back together, I had a serious talk with him to go over the problems that led to our first breakup, and told him if it was the same, there was no point. Right off the bat, I noticed a change, because as I would tell him things, he was able to acknowledge what he had done wrong, and what he had done since then to better himself as a person. We are able to talk about our past without an argument, and we both realized what choices we made that led us to the breaking point. It's a breath of fresh air to be able to communicate openly about serious issues we had in the past and can see how we've grown from it. We rarely have issues at all now. Of course, we're not perfect, but the fact that we're both given 100% leaves less opportunity for mistakes. When we communicate with him over anything, we're able to point out, when I communicate with him over anything, we're able to point out the pros and cons of the issue at hand and agree on a solution. If I'm upset about anything, he tries to be as supportive as he can be to help me get through it. And at the end of the day, he's a very sensitive person than I ever thought he would be, especially when it comes to our daughters. In conclusion, we don't realize how much communication matters to our everyday lives as an individual until we start to discover issues. Whenever we need to get something accomplished, we usually think before we speak to make sure that what we are saying makes sense to the other person. But in a romantic relationship, a lot of times we like thinking and just say things regardless if they are hurtful or not, because that's the way we feel at the moment in time. And eventually we end up regretting it. With that being said, we must learn as an individual how we should communicate with different people in different situations, so when we communicate respectfully and effectively, so we can communicate respectfully and effectively to achieve our goals.